Hi, I'm Marina Passini, the Chief Curator at the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art.
Marina, tell us the history of the museum and how the collection has changed and grown from its early inception to the present day.
The museum was founded in 1916. In fact, the funds for the museum came from Bessie Vance Brooks, who you see painted here by Cecilia Bow and named in honor of her deceased husband, Hamilton Brooks. When the museum opened, it had very few works in the permanent collection. The collection grew slowly during the first few decades, but one of the exciting things that happened was the museum was the beneficiary of a gift from the Crest Foundation. Some people may recognize the name. The Crest Foundation gave paintings to a large number to the National Gallery, but also to institutions across the country. We got some because the very first Crest store was founded here in Memphis in the late 1900s. So that was probably the largest, most important gift, but several other big things have come certainly over those decades. We now have over 10,000 works in the collection, and the collection spans over 5,000 years from the ancient world to the present, although our strengths really are European and American paintings.
What is the focus of your collecting?
Well, we are continuing to collect in all the areas that we did initially. We obviously want to continue to build on strengths, but there are other areas that have been identified for growth. One of them is we are increasing our holdings of works by African American artists. That's one of the reasons that the African Print Fashion exhibition was of such interest to us. We try to install exhibitions every year that relate to either African American artists or Africa itself.
What was the catalyst for holding this particular show, African Print Fashion Now?
And you left off the back half of the title, A Story of Taste, Globalization, and Style, which is a really important reason of why we decided to take this exhibition. We really like this exhibition for a whole bunch of different reasons. One of the things that it does is it brings the story of what is happening in Africa to the present day. We think a lot of people misunderstand and think that Africa is still just a place where traditional art is made, and this exhibition brings that story forward into the present day, as we will see when we look at some of the designs. But one of the other things that we wanted to talk about is the issue of globalization, which was in the title. And we're standing here in front of a wall of the textiles that are really the backbone of the exhibition, and this part of the exhibition explores how those textiles came to be. And a really abbreviated version of this story is that the Dutch East Indies Company wanted to go into Indonesia and undercut the market for handmade batiks, and they developed mechanized, machine-made fabrics to sell, and the Indonesians weren't really interested because they preferred their handmade versions. So what they had to do was find another market, and what they did was take them to another colonial portion of the world, and they went to sub-Saharan Africa and Western Africa, where the fabrics were embraced and ended up becoming really associated with Pan-Africanism. One of the other interesting parts of the globalization story is that during the period of independence, the fabrics were actually started to be made in Africa, where previously they'd been made in Switzerland, the Netherlands, and in England. And then the last portion of that is that what happens, as in so many other parts of our world, is that the Asian market came in and undercut the cost, and so all of a sudden the African design producers ended up getting competed pretty much out of the business. And let me just close with one last small thing. One of the things we love about this exhibition is the way that these textiles are named. It's a very important piece of the puzzle. So for example, up here we've got, if you go out, I go out, and that's a wife saying to her husband that if you're gonna step out of the house, I will too. We have Michelle Obama's purse up there, and we've got some political figures. Here's Nelson Mandela, and again, the fabrics have a significance beyond just being beautiful. They tell stories, and the women name them, and that's a very significant part of the process.
Ms. Vecina, how is this incorporated into this exhibit of globalized material and fashion?
Well, you know, the way that African women get their clothes is very different from how we do it in the United States. We go into a department store and there are racks with multiple examples of different sizes. That's not how it works in Africa. They will go into a market and they will go to a fabric dealer. The shops are floor to ceiling, stacked with different textiles. They'll pick the one that they're most interested in, and then they will go and work with a seamstress or a tailor. And so what we're seeing here is some examples that explain how that process works. So, for example, the posters down here on the end, the woman would go in and say, I want this dress with this particular sleeve, with this length, with this bodice, and then the seamstress would create the look working with those within those guidelines. They work without, basically they use chalk, a measuring tape, and scissors. You do have an example of a paper model here, but many of them don't even bother to make patterns that they work from. The image that you're seeing here on the far left is something that they would hang outside of the store to give a sense of what their capabilities are as a kind of an advertisement. But again, each one of the dresses is very much a collaboration between the woman herself and the seamstress or the tailor.
So, how many designers are represented in the exhibit, and do they all reside and work in Africa?
So I did a count, and I think I came up with a number of 42. But I have to say that included in that 42 are some works in the exhibition that we don't know who the designers are. The majority of them do live in Africa, although some of them are now based in England, or, for example, one of them lives in Philadelphia. Although a lot of times they'll have a base in an African country and then also in a European country. This is a great example of one of the designers who we do not know who the person is that made it. So the way that Africans get their clothing is they'll go to a market, they will select a piece of fabric that they like, they will take it to a seamstress or a tailor, and working with that seamstress and tailor, come up with something that's very unique. This is a great example of how a family will go and get ensembles for every member of the household. What I love about this particular grouping is the fact that it's the same piece of fabric, but that the designer, the seamstress, used it in very different ways. So each piece, the mother's outfit looks different from the child's, from the husband's pants. I think it's a really creative example of what you can do with fabric just by how you cut it and how you decide to assemble it. And again, this is, we do not know the name of this particular designer.
What is it about these four dresses that we're looking at that really excite you?
I think these are exciting for a whole bunch of different reasons. First of all, I would like to identify the designer is Itoen Basi, and we're very excited that she is going to be coming to Memphis. On April 11th, she'll give a talk at the museum, and then on the 13th, she's going to participate in a runway show with Memphis Fashion Week as part of their annual celebration of fashion. Now, what I find so exciting about Itoen's work is that, like the other designers in this gallery, she's taking traditional African print fashion fabrics, but she's transforming them into something very modern and very contemporary and doing extraordinarily creative things with them. This beautiful first dress, the way that she has created the top with that, I don't even know how to describe that oval of the top with those beautiful strips coming through, coming from down from the neck to the waistline, but you can see underneath it that she's using a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Secondary fabric.
She's using a secondary fabric that closely relates to the one on top. And then again, look at the beautiful skirt with those strips stitched. And again, as those strips move, you can see that secondary fabric peeping through. Next to it, that gorgeous dress, which is actually much closer to a traditional quilt in the way that she uses those patterns, the various different fabrics to create that lovely descending line. And then the third dress, again, another wonderful use of the strips going all the way down from the waist. But what she's also doing is introducing jewelry, again, made out of the same fabric. And it's really, for these designers, really important for them to be using these traditional fabrics, but doing something modern and contemporary, so that they are aligning themselves with the history of their African history, but at the same time becoming very much contemporary.
And the fourth dress also at the end has the same bias tubes that make up the whole back of the top portion of the dress, correct?
Absolutely. Again, just an extraordinary creativity in how she between approaches these various designs. Just beautiful.